So thank you everybody for joining. Today, we want to focus on what you see here on the title slide, which is the how to actually grow our influence, impact, and career as technical leaders, as individual contributors, and everything in between. So to give you a little bit of context about myself, I'm the co-founder of Tech Leaders. I'm a fractional CTO, and I've been really reflecting on my journey going from an individual contributor to an engineering leader and all the challenges that I faced in that gap. When I was first going from a senior software engineer to becoming an engineering manager for the first time, I found that it was an entirely different skill set, and there weren't a lot of places to go to learn what I needed to know to do the job effectively. It was so different from just being a core contributor to now managing the work of other people and leading them in the direction we needed to go. It was a very difficult trial and error period where I was just essentially asking everybody that I could track down what their advice was, and I was piecing it together for myself. But it took a long time, and I made a lot of those common mistakes that any new manager makes. And so what we're going to go over today is show some of the things that can help you and speed up that learning process and reduce the learning curve a little bit. Stephen.
So my name's Stephen Bates, as you can see. I'm based in the UK and in Cyprus. I'm actually in Cyprus at the moment, so I split my time between the two countries. It's a very nice way to live. And my expertise is people, really. Understanding how people think, leadership, and I've been working in this field for 20 plus years. And one of the things I really love to focus on is helping people understand just their own behavior in a very simple context, in a very simple way. So it's very practical, it's very pragmatic, because when I hear the word mindset or something like that, I shudder a little bit, because sometimes it's so theoretical, it's so fluffy, that how can you actually use the information about understanding your thinking? So one of the things we talk about a lot in the program, the Tech Leader program, is, for example, the process of making decisions. And it's quite an eye-opener to realize that we have processes for doing things. So in tech, you have processes for getting the delivery of what you want to to create, and people are the same. And this is my approach, and this is why Todd and I sort of gelled when we met each other, because I like working in frameworks, I like working in processes. So what can be on the outside a confusing behavior that we don't necessarily understand, there is actually a way of analyzing it and putting it into an understandable framework, so you can make different decisions, you can change your thinking on things. And if you can change your thinking and understand your thinking so you can change it, then guess what? You can change your decisions, you can change your actions, and therefore your results. So again, that's another framework. So I've been doing this for many years, and my core expertise, really two of them, are sabotage thinking, imposter syndrome, why we get in our own way, and also how to turn that into being influential in leadership and management. So that's my specialities. That's what I have a lot of fun with. And this is why Todd and I started Tech Leaders together.
Awesome. Thank you, Stephen. Our mission at Tech Leaders is to help solve the world's toughest problems by bringing life-changing tech to market faster. And we believe the best way to do that is actually by increasing the skills, the impact, and the influence of technical leaders and people who are in charge of technical projects all over the world. In my experience throughout my career at individual companies, but then also being a fractional CTO and startup consultant for the last few years, I continually saw the same problem. And it wasn't that the technical teams were talented at all these companies. They were able to solve the technical challenges just fine in most cases. It was actually the people problems and the non-technical skills that were most lacking. And so we believe that by increasing these sorts of skills, we can deliver on this mission of delivering these life-changing technologies much faster than normally would go to market. So today, this is the agenda, what we're going to go over. We're going to start with who is this for? Who should care about this? Who does it matter to? And then why is it so critical? Why are these skills and these things important for you for your career? And then what do you need to actually do to move forward and take action on those things? How can you actually do it yourself? How can you apply some of these things in your role today without waiting for a promotion or new opportunities? These are things that you can do in your role, whatever your title is. And then we'll wrap it up with some Q&A. If there's any questions you have, feel free to put those in the Q&A as we're talking, and then we'll address those at the end. So first of all, who is this for? This is really for people who are individual contributors that are ready or want to move into the direction of being a team leader, a tech leader, an engineering manager, some sort of managerial or leadership role, or people who are new to the role. Maybe they've recently been promoted and are realizing what I just talked about earlier, where this is a totally different skill set to be someone who's in charge of the engineering side and actually leading a team. And it can be really jarring when you get put in that position and don't have the skills or the support to really do well. So this is also for people who are currently in that position. And then I think the last group of people this is really for are people who are already senior managers, but maybe have some emerging leaders on their team, or people who they are curious or thinking maybe that's someone who could make a good leader, and they want to fast track them on that path so they can be a strong engineering leader faster than they normally would. So Stephen, why are these non-technical skills so critical?
It's very simple. I think the most common thing that people realize is that when, we're going to go through a model on this to help you understand, but when we spent a lot of time learning our technical skills, what we suddenly realized that, oh, there's a hell of a lot more skills to being a leader and a manager that I've never actually learned. And this is not just in the tech sector. I've worked in many sectors over the years. And it's a very, very common thing for people to be shocked that I'm being very successful at my professional skill set, and I'm doing really well. And then I get promoted. And often this happens in the tech sector because you may be the most senior person in that team, and you get invited or told, or it comes as default that you end up as the leader or the manager of that team. And I was speaking to someone on the program literally just half an hour ago, and there was a person in the team who was offered the position of being the leader, and they said, I don't want to do it. It's just not who I am, and I can't do it. So there's a lot of people who are pushed into leadership roles, or they want to take leadership roles, and then they realize it's a whole different skill set, and it's a very complex skill set. And, you know, if you want to create better results, you have to combine the two. So this is why we created Tech Leaders, is because there's amazing people with amazing technical skill sets, and then they haven't really spent a lot of time working on the other stuff that they need to be a leader. It's a very different job, very, very different job. And this is what we call multiplier skills. You're multiplying the value you have because you've got this great technical skill set, and now we're going to multiply your value because you have non-technical skills as well. So that's why I think they're important. You might disagree, Todd, but you know, you've been through it.
No, that's a huge part of it. And I think even before you get to the point of being a leader or a manager, we all want to have more influence on our teams. Let's say we're a senior software engineer. We want to have our architecture be the architecture that is going to be used for a new product, or we've got some new innovative solution to a problem that the tech team is facing. We want to get easier buy-in from the stakeholders on that idea. And a lot of that comes down to just building influence. And a lot of that then comes down to the better non-technical skills, how you communicate, how you understand the priorities of the stakeholders, so you can frame your ideas in a way that matters to them, so they're on your side. So these skills are critical, whether or not you have a title of an engineering leader or a team leader. If you want to get more done as an individual, this is how you do it.
Yeah, and Alex has actually just put a question in we're going to answer, because we're going to cover this in a minute, Alex. So there are some other options to grow and not to manage. So we're going to
Great
answer.
question.
This is a very common thing. It's how do I, often people want to be a leader, but managing is something they really don't want to do. So we're going to cover that in depth as one of the most important things to be a tech leader. But there's a lot of people really don't like the idea of managing, but they still want to increase their impact and their influence and their career. So we'll talk about that in a second.
Great question. Thanks, Alex. So another good thing here to think about is why would I want these better non-technical skills? We talked about what comes with that. And it really comes down to, if you want to work on more than just what you're currently working on, the more impact you can make, the more scope of responsibility you get, the more influential you can be, the more scope of responsibility you get in your role, whether you're a leader or an individual senior contributor. And oftentimes, as your scope of responsibility increases, so does your income. And so if you care about these things, if you care about affecting more users than you're currently affecting on the team that you're on, or creating a product that has a larger footprint, or affecting a larger piece of the organization of the company you work at, all these things are good reasons for why you would want to invest in your non-technical skills. And it's an incredible way to stand out in the job marketplace too. A lot of people are job hunting right now, and this is a really good way to stand out amongst everybody else that has similar technical skills. At a certain point, those can become commoditized, but this is a way to stand out as a unique individual with these non-technical skills.
And I think one of the things to think about also is having more impact, having more influence, and obviously getting the income, but it's having the confidence to know how to influence and to create that impact. So that's it's when we go into a different realm or way of working, or what we talk about a lot is redefining your definition of work as you go up the ladder and you have more influence. It's having the confidence to operate at that level when perhaps you never have done, and how to talk to stakeholders or investors, and become that technical leader with that confidence to make sure people listen to you. So this is a very important part of what we help people do.
So the flip side of this is why would companies want their people to have better non-technical skills? There's lots of sub reasons, but the primary reason is that it creates more return on investment for the company. They can get more done with less resources. They can ship product features and new products and get those into the market much faster when everybody is aligned and communicating and collaborating in a very efficient way. It's not the code that makes that happen. It's the non-technical skills. And so companies like to invest in these skills for their own people. A lot of you may have an education budget that you can actually tap into to upskill in this way, because it's so important for these companies to have people with these skills. They do invest money in that. And so a great way to stand out for yourself is to just invest in the skills ahead of time and get those before you're going into the role. So at the end of the day, it's about more return on investment for the companies. Now, this is a big cliche. Stephen, what's your impression of this cliche?
Well, it's a cliche, it's particularly in the tech sector, but it's also, this is true right across industry. But with the tech sector, this is where the cliche really is. You're great with tech. You spend a lot of time learning how to communicate with the keyboard and the software, but actually not so great with people. Now, this is not entirely true. It obviously is a cliche, but right across the board, when people move into a management level, the problem happens because their non-technical skills, their people skills, their decision-making, their planning skills are not perhaps as well exercise and you haven't done them as much. And this then becomes a problem because, you know, you're great with your professional skills, but not so great with people. And you only have to think about how many times have you worked with someone who's a fantastic technically, but they're actually not very good at managing. They may be very innovative with their professional skills and their technical skills. They come up with great solutions, but boy, are they just not very good at building a team, holding a team together, motivating a team. They may be very erratic in their behavior. And it can be very, very stressful for a lot of people who are performing at a very high level, and then they go into a leadership management role and they're just not very good at this side of it. So it is a cliche, but as most of the people we work with, I'm going back to the word confidence to know how to work with people, confidence to know how to lead and manage, confidence just to know what the rules are and how to do it is incredibly important, because, you know, within every cliche, with every generalization, there's usually some truth. So it's about learning how to balance your non-technical skills and then use those to leverage your tech skills and experience. And most people, you know, will have heard of this, that people don't leave a bad job, they leave a bad manager. And if you had a better manager, then life will be a lot easier because things will be better planned. It'll be easier, you know, resources in the right time and place. You get treated in a better way and it's not firefighting all the time. Most of us have had experiences of working with poor leadership, poor management. So the painful thing sometimes is we have to look at ourselves and go, well, is that me? And when we've had people join the program, a lot of the time, you know, people have been a little beaten up because they've gone into a management leadership position and then they failed, or it became incredibly stressful and they wanted to go back to being an IC, but they didn't really want to go back to full-time coding. They had an aspiration to move up the ladder and take more responsibility and create more impact, but they got beaten up a little bit because they failed. It was very, very stressful. So as much of this is a cliche we can sort of roll our eyes at, it's actually got a lot of painful truth for a lot of people on the receiving end of a bad manager. But why are they a bad manager? And this is what we're going to talk about next. Why do so many great people struggle in leadership and management roles?
Mm-hmm. The other thing I'll say about this cliche is I think it's actually really damaging to our whole industry, because how many times have you seen a company or worked at a company maybe where they just keep the engineering team kind of over in a corner and they don't include them in some of the business planning or the product planning or the sales process. And then next thing you know, maybe the sales team has promised a feature that doesn't yet exist and is not something technically feasible. Many cases like that. And it really is caused by the fact that a lot of times the other functions in the company don't trust the tech team to be able to be involved with some of those decisions and questions that are more people oriented. And so if we as an industry can level up in this way, it's a really good way to get a proper seat at the table for all of these core business decisions and get out of the silo, the technical silo that can often happen. And so I think this is important for individuals to level up on these skills, to break out of this cliche. But I think as an industry, we actually need to break out of it because it's very limiting and damaging to what we do in our profession.
Which makes us take into this very important question. And this is to help, you know, this is going back to your question, Alex, you know, other options to grow and not be a manager. So I've been using the term leader and manager very deliberately. These two things are very closely entwined. You need to have skills both if you're going to be a tech leader, but it doesn't mean you equally have to be a manager to leader. So what we want you to think about and be able to think about as we go through this section is, what kind of tech leader do I want to be? Meaning, what's your skill set? What is it you like to do the most? Where are you most valuable? What is it that you don't like to do? What is it that is your Achilles heel? And then how to deal with that. So if you don't like managing, if you're not what I call a natural manager, and we're going to go into that in a second, you know that, so then you can structure your team and your skills so you do not end up spending a lot of time doing things that you don't like doing and perhaps you're not as good at. So this is the question we want you to think about, because it's not one size fits all. You can design what sort of tech leader you want to be. And I work with a client, I think it's a good case in point of this. I worked with a client who was very experienced and quite high up within quite a large organization, and they were miserable. And when we sat down and we went through the process, which I'm going to take you through in a moment, the Genius Zone model, we realized they were spending a lot of time low-level managing. So back to your question, Alex, on this. They were spending a lot of time low-level managing, and they were undervalued in the organization, and they were being undervalued in the use of their time because they were doing a lot of low-level managing. So we looked at what sort of tech leader they should be. And they went back into the organization, they explained the situation, and they were going to leave. They were so fed up they were going to leave. And what they did was they actually designed a whole new job for themselves, where they did what they were best at and got rid of 90% of all day-to-day management, because they actually designed what sort of tech leader they wanted to be, where they were most valuable, doing what they most enjoyed. So this is really important, because you don't have to just be one sort. It's about finding your strengths and finding your biggest value. So I think that's where we need to go to now, if you're happy with that. And again, throw up some questions. So we got a good couple of questions in there.
So Stephen, what is the Genius Zone model, and how can we use this to help identify what kind of tech leader we want to be, whether it's an engineering, a leader, or a manager? How do we use this?
So when I've worked with people in business, I found that there's really three different, almost like attitudes to how we approach business. And got a very simple Venn diagram here. And some people are innovators and they love to create. They love new ideas. They're always looking to see what they can do in a different way. They could be someone who's increasing their knowledge of code and how to use it. It could be that they create marketing campaigns, they start new businesses, they create new products, but they're always innovating. And they could be innovating on systems and creating new systems. But these people, they get their kick out of what they do. Their most enjoyable time at work is creating something new. Managers, and this is why I talk about a natural manager or a non-natural managers, people who like to be in control of things, whether it's systems, people, processes. They have a natural desire to create order and make scalability and efficiency. And these people, as I said, like to be in control of things, but in a good way. And these are the people that can turn a startup chaos, when everybody's diving in and just starting something up for the first time. These are the people that create scalability and structure, which makes a company grow and solid and profitable at the end of the day. So managers like to control. This is what they get a kick out of. And then workers, where most of us start when we're very young, we don't know much about anything, is workers who like to be in the worker zone, like to use their skills and knowledge, and it's about what they can do with that skills and knowledge. So a worker who enjoys being a worker gets a kick out of thinking, I made that happen. I use my skills and knowledge, whatever it could be in any industry, in any sector, feels proud of themselves because they wrote some really great code that made that process work. Or, they could be a tree surgeon who cut that tree down in a really great way and it was all nice and safe and it looks fantastic. It could be absolutely anything, but the pride for them comes in doing, using their skills and knowledge in a great way. But what we tend to have is a first preference. So if you're designing yourself as the tech leader, what sort of tech leader you want to be, the first thing is you've got to ask the question is, what's your first preference? So are you more of an innovator? Are you more of a manager or more of a worker? So the first preference is what you would like to spend most of your time doing. So when we are starting off and we're learning that skill set, we might say, oh, I'm a worker. But you might then have a second preference, and most people do. And the second preference is, for me, I was always a worker, enjoying what I did, using my knowledge with my clients, but I was always innovating. So I was a worker innovator. Now I swapped it round because you can do that because this is about your preference. And now I'm much more of an innovator worker. So I'm looking to build the tech leader company as an innovator, as a leader. But the third preference is the one we usually don't want to do. This is our least favorite thing. Doesn't mean that you don't have skills in it. You might have skills in all three, but it's not about your skill set, which most people get employed upon. It's your natural attitude and aptitude of what you enjoy most. Because if you are doing what you enjoy most, you tend to do it well. You tend to do it with enthusiasm. So my third favorite, interestingly enough, is being a manager. I like being a leader, an innovator. I like using my knowledge I built up over the years as a worker. But the thing I like to do the least within work is actually managing. And so if I ask Todd where you are, I know where he is.
Similar to you, Stephen. Yeah, I started my career as a worker, like probably everyone on this call. Moved into more of the innovative leadership, and I would say this is where I prefer to be, with kind of light touch managing when necessary. But we're very similar in where we lay in this diagram.
So the important reason to know this is because if you are spending most of your time doing what you enjoy, then you'll probably be quite happy in your work. But as my example, my case study, he was in a very similar place. He was up in the innovator zone on the right-hand side, quite high up as an innovator. That was his natural preference. But he spent most of his time down in the manager zone doing lower level management stuff. And he spent most of his time not in his genius zone doing what he liked to do. So if you know where you are the happiest, then this is where you should be aiming yourself and putting yourself out there into the industry and say, this is my most valuable place. This is where I am most useful. But the problem Todd and I have is that although I understand management and it's part of what I help people be better at, it's my least favorite thing. Same with Todd. So we have a hole in the company structure if there was just two of us, because which one of us was going to be diving into the management side to make sure that the control systems within the company are working really well? So I actually take that role on more like a COO role. But what I'm doing is I'm training somebody within the company to do much more of that role. So I'm building a team around myself and Todd where we've got the right people with the right attitudes and the right skill sets, obviously. So I have to do less management. So you can be a manager, for example, who's very innovative. And I was speaking to one of the people on one of the one-to-one calls we have with our people on the program, that they love creating new processes for running a technical project, but they do not like running those processes. So they're an innovative manager. They're in the red-green zone. But actually what they would need is to hand over to somebody else who actually really enjoys making sure those processes work day by day by day by day. So where are you most valuable? Are you an innovator first? Are you a manager first? Are you a worker? And where would you like to go? Because you can change, because this is about what you value, what you enjoy doing. So where would you want to go forward in your career? So back to your answer question, the question we had is, do you need to be always in a management part of the training, of the management zone? No, not necessarily. But having the skills to manage your managers and lead your managers is a very, very important part of being a tech leader. So you can actually instruct them in the way that they get the information they need, and that you hand over the management to somebody else who's actually a much more natural manager. So if you are not somebody who puts manager as your first or second preference, you're not a natural manager. That's not how you tend to think. You don't tend to think in that way. It's not what interests you. But if you know that, improving your skills at that level is very important, but also building the team around you so you don't come out of your genius zone and you do what you're most valuable at, and then you stay in a career pathway and a career value that you enjoy, and you become more and more valuable because you get known for that type of tech leader. But if you are a natural manager, then you have a great skill set to the sector, tech sector as well, because if you are somebody who enjoys those creation and control and an organization of processes and people, that's very valuable too. But where are you? What would you enjoy most? And this is why looking at what you and how you want to be known as a tech leader, designing your route as a tech leader is really important, because everyone's different, but everyone has value, because all of these points on this very simple model are valuable. Everyone, every company, every project needs all three.
I want to look at a couple of these questions too, because I think they're related to the genius zone here. Claudio, Claudio is asking, should a team lead be technical? And I think it's very hard to have a team that doesn't have a technical innovator, which is what would be the leader in this case. You could have a non-technical manager, think like a project manager or something like that. But I think it's very hard to have a high-performing engineering team that doesn't have a leader that is technical and understands technical innovation in a pretty deep way. So that's my take. Unless what can happen is, if it's a big enough team, there are actual tech leads on kind of sub teams, and the head of the engineering org might be less technical themselves. If they're really good people manager, kind of think a VP of engineering or something, but you need the person that's leading the technical decisions to actually be technical. Thanks for that. And then Taryn says he disagrees about managers liking to control. And I would actually posit that what you said, Taryn, in your explanation, is that they're actually creating control by doing what needs to be done for the most critical asset in this case. So I think, yes, they are, they're not, control doesn't mean forcing things. It actually just means creating an environment that is not chaotic, that is aligned, and moving in the direction it needs to move. And so it's less about micromanaging and keeping your thumb on everybody, but actually doing what needs to be done to create control in the situation and the circumstances. And so I would agree. I would actually say that what you're describing is control. Stephen, do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, micromanaging is a style of management. It's a way of managing, and it's a legitimate style. Usually, when things are really going bad, when you have to dial into every little thing. So it's not a style that people enjoy. It's not a style that, I should say, it's not a style that teams enjoy over a longer period of time. But it's a legitimate way of managing, but it's usually quite negative long-term, and it disempowers people. So crisis management, you can micromanage, but it's that if the manager is a scared manager, or they like to feel, and this is what this hyper need for control. They're scared of things going wrong. That's their only style. That's going to really damage a team's morale and their feeling of their worth, and actually just doing a good job. So control can be created in many different ways, but the style of the manager, micromanager is just one of them, and it is legitimate, but should be used very sparingly. There's many other ways of creating good control, which is far more pleasant and far more effective.
Awesome. Thanks for that, Taryn. Suzanne suggests using the word accountable instead of control. I could see that that's maybe control is a bit of a loaded word. That's a good feedback. Fair point. So as you're thinking through the Genius Zone model, there are some questions to ask. Stephen, what are these questions and how should we think about them for ourselves?
Are you a natural manager or not? Mohammed says, I guess managing is not for me. So this is an important question, because you may be better at leading. But if you're going to be a leader of a company or a project and you want to take more responsibility, you will need the management skills that go with it. But are you a natural manager who should spend most of your time managing? Probably not. That's not the highest value. So understanding whether you're a natural manager or not, and this is what you enjoy doing, is a really good question to ask, because you can be leaders in many different ways. So is the second question, is managing getting in the way of more valuable work? It will be then, how do you structure your team around you? So, and as Todd mentioned it, light touch managing, we call it. How can you do light touch managing, and then people who love to manage, the more natural managers within your team, can take that on for you. So you may not be going into management, but you can certainly go into leadership. But if you have the ability to understand management, then it becomes much, much, much easier for you. So understanding whether you're a natural manager or not is very important to deciding who you are and what you're aiming for in your tech leader career. So how do I set up my team to maximize my value? So if you take those three areas, we need skill sets, we need people, we need headcount to get the job done. But which people do you need around you to make sure that you stay in your highest level, in your genius zone? And then how do you set up your team to maximize their value? So when you are thinking about the genius zone model and what your skills are, it's okay to say, well, this is not my highest level skill, this is not my highest level value, but how do I make sure that the team around me is not just designed on the technical skill sets, but also the attitude and aptitude of the people in there? So if you need a lot of management work done, for example, who are the natural managers who may not be formal managers yet? They may not be, with the title of manager, but actually they would love to take on some of that responsibility and help you organize things and maintain control of things and make sure things get done. So setting up your team is very, very important to make sure that you stay at your highest level value, so you do your highest work and your reputation grows.
Good stuff. So a very common blocker when it comes to making the leap is imposter syndrome. And this is something that we can feel at various points in our career path. For some, it hits when we're just junior engineers, got our first job. We're surrounded by people that are more senior with a lot more experience. That can make you feel like you're an imposter. And that's a really common thing with junior engineers. There are other inflection points where this can happen again when you're making a shift from a senior engineer to an engineering manager or some sort of tech lead or team lead. Making that gap, it's a totally different skill set, as we've been talking about. It also requires a bit of a different identity. And that's another place that imposter syndrome can really show its face. And I struggled with this myself when I was at my startup Digit, initially it was just me, and it was a very small team, flat org. I was just building. And that was great. But then as the time grew and as the company grew and the team grew, now I found myself in a position where I needed to be leading others much more. And at first I kind of struggled with that. Like, is this, who I want to be, who I am? Like, do I want to stay a builder, an individual contributor, or do I want to continue to grow upwards and lead more people? And, I was kind of stuck in this battle where I wanted to create more leverage with every unit of work that I did. So for every hour of work that I did, I wanted to make more impact with that hour. And I found the best way to do that was by leading other people and unblocking them and teaching them and upskilling them and giving them the strategy that they should execute. But I had some doubts, some lingering doubts, like, was I ready? Is that the path I want to go down? Do I need to learn some additional technical skills before I'm qualified to lead other engineers? These were things that I had to wrestle with. And when I talk to people who are trying to make the same leap, imposter syndrome is one of the most common things that comes up, this sort of doubt. So what do we do with imposter syndrome, Stephen?
I think the first thing to recognize is that we all have imposter syndrome in some way. We may not call it imposter syndrome, but the reason it's so common, and it's an excessive doubt, really, is that doubting is an important part of making a decision. There's a 4-step process we teach to making better decisions, and the last step is actually to what if ourselves, to look at why we're doing something, what we're doing, and what the plan we have is, and then we should doubt it. So if you're going to buy a television or buy a car, you do your planning, you think about what you want, how you're going to buy it, and then we should stop and go, is this the right thing? Is this the right choice? So every decision has that last component, the 4th step, which is, let me just review everything. So when we are having some good doubt, we are thinking, well, am I ready for this new role? Am I ready for this new position? Should I go for this in the direction of my career? And that is good to do, because it helps us think about our plan and make sure we've made a good plan, and we're not just getting caught up with emotion, or we're just, we're stressed and we want to change jobs. It makes us create a better plan and a better goal. The problem with imposter syndrome, when it becomes true imposter syndrome, or when we have excessive fear, excessive worry about that we're going to fail, is that good doubt, that good question, shall I do this, becomes more dominant than our desire and our goals and our capability. So imposter syndrome is basically excessive fear, and which leads to over questioning ourselves. And most people have this argument in their head of that, I really know I can do this, I want to do this. But often we have learned from, usually before we're even in work, 90% of the people that I work with on this, they usually learn it before they get into work, or something happens at work that makes them imposter syndrome worse. But most people, they have this excessive fear of failure or criticism or doubt that actually happens before we even start work. Often goes back a long time into our past. And that thinking, that fear, is controlling our careers now. And so one of the most important things is to actually get this cleared, get this sorted out, because it stops us actually believing in ourselves and believing in our value, which stops us actually deciding where we should go in our career. It's not a difficult thing to solve, actually. It's actually far easier than most people think. But if you're having doubts about can you or should you, is it a good doubt or is it excessive? Are you holding back and missing opportunities? Are you not allowing yourself to do things that you know you should be able to do? And if you have that, it's something we tackle all the time. This is why we're talking about it, because 40% of people have excessive amounts of self-doubt and fear of making a mistake or failing or being judged or criticized or whatever it is. So it's a very common thing, and it's an accidental thing that happens to many people, millions of people. But actually, again, it's a process of thinking which you can change quite quickly. So if you were to just tell that little part of your head to shut up for a second and say, what do I really want to do? that's the true you saying, this is my ambition, this is what I'm capable of doing. So I just wanted to talk about that, because it stops really talented people fulfilling their potential and achieving what they could achieve.
Mm-hmm. So what are some ways to make managing easier? There's some people here that don't necessarily like managing, maybe don't feel them are the natural managers themselves. So what can we do to make managing easier if we fall into that bucket? Comes down to culture.
Yeah. If you
creating the right team culture.
It's one of the most easy, for people who are not, who want more of a leader than the manager, for example. If you make sure you're creating the right culture and getting buy-in to that culture from your team, your management responsibilities will drop in half, because the team will self-manage and they will make sure everybody else in the team is joining in with the standards that they've agreed upon is the right way of working. So there are many ways of making management easier, not just the skills of understanding it and how to do that, and how to be a better manager and how to be a better communicator and influencer, but creating the culture that people want to buy into and enjoy being in means that your management activities really drop really quickly. So this is one of the biggest leverage points. And there's lots of them, there's many, but this is one of the ones that is often overlooked, but it's one of the most important ones to make you effective as a leader, getting your culture right. And your team will manage it themselves to a very large degree.
Mm-hmm. So another important thing, and this is actually related to what you just asked, Claudio, around being better prepared programmer than the people on your team. So a really common trap for people that are going from senior individual contributor to a leader of some kind is that they don't update their definition of work. When you make this step in your career, there's some things you actually have to stop doing and some new things you have to start doing. And the failure mode for new leaders is to actually revert to what you always did before. And so this can look like new leaders or managers who are doing coding tasks that are better suited for someone else. Like if they're in the critical path of delivery and actually holding back the delivery because maybe they're busy doing the leadership stuff, but they also are busy with their hands getting dirty and down in the weeds. That's an example of someone who hasn't updated their definition of work so that they're focused on a different level of work, and the people on the team can focus on the stuff in the weeds. So a lot of this comes down to working at the right level, whether it's strategic, tactical, or operational, to get the most leverage out of what you know, what your skills are, and what your experience is. Stephen, what are your thoughts on this one?
Yeah, and especially as, if a lot of your time has been, doing operational tasks, coding, and you want to move up the level to have more influence and impact up the career pathway, it takes practice, and it takes, there's frameworks where you can learn to be better at these things. So one of the important things is saying, defining who you are as a tech leader is like, well, which level are you aiming at now? Are you next level? Okay, I want to be better at tactical planning, or I'm really good at strategic vision and direction. So what's your goal? Where would you like to go? Where would you like to spend more of your time? That's really important when you're defining as you said, your new definition of work. And some people feel a bit guilty because, especially in the tech sector, as a coder, how many of you have had your hours logged of how many hours of code you did, or how many lines of code, or how many bugs you fixed. So we're often judged in a certain way, on a certain, level of performance. But strategic planning and direction, sometimes people feel a bit guilty because they're actually getting paid to think. You're paid to leverage your experience as a tech leader, not how many tasks and processes can you do. So this can be a jump for people because it's really defining their value of work and what work is. And when you're thinking of yourself or what sort of tech lead you want to be, which level do you want to operate at?
So once you've got some of these answers, these questions answered, it's really important to then not just increase your value internally, what you're believing about yourself and the skills that you have, but also externally. How do you increase the visibility of what you know now as you're stepping into a new role or as you're preparing for a promotion? You have to make it known what you know now, that you have upskilled in this certain way to maybe fix a specific gap or problem on the team. So it's not enough to just level up and upskill yourself. You also have to then put your promoter hat on a little bit and spread the good word, and build your reputation so everyone knows that you have this.
And obviously there's been some comments and conversations about control and managing, and what's a good style and a bad style, micromanaging and everything else. But the question really is, why would people want to follow you as a leader? If you ask yourself, well, why would they want to be in my team? That's because you decided this is the sort of tech leader I want to be. And this is how I want to lead, how I want to manage. So you choose your style. There's many different styles and there's many different approaches. But the important thing is, if you're able to choose your style that is effective and you're happy with, and other people want to join in, they will follow you as that leader. And if you have that influence and impact that people want you to be their leader, then this whole conversation about style of control, or whatever you want to call the different styles of management, it almost becomes irrelevant, because your style is working for you and it's working for the project and it's working for your team. So how do you want to be as a leader, and how do you want to be known in terms of your reputation? What do you want to be known for? And that's how you really get to design your career. Back to the question, what sort of tech leader do you want to be?
So here is a good summary of the steps that you need to do. And you can start applying these and moving through these steps today, starting with just choosing your direction. And you can use that Genius Zone model to start thinking about this and think about what is the direction of leadership that you want to take for your own style, and then create that leadership persona to support that. Once you've created that persona, that becomes part of your tool to overcome the imposter syndrome that can sometimes come up. Then once you've got that plan in place, then it's a matter of actually gaining the skills you need to deliver on that persona and leadership style that you want to move forward with. That just adds more value, it multiplies the value of the technical skills. When you add a new technical language to your stack, it's generally just kind of a linear improvement. But when you actually add these non-technical skills, it becomes a multiplier and an exponential gain on what you already know technically. And then the fourth step is to, as we were saying, start building that reputation. Let it be known what skills you now have and what direction you're taking your career to being more of a leader. So these are things that you can start taking action on today, no matter what your title. It's never too late or too early to redecide your direction and create a new direction and create a persona to support that, upskill in the way that you need to, and then let everybody know about it. If we could boil this down to 4 high-level steps, it's those 4.
And if you choose your direction as a leader, your style, your persona, then you're taking control of your career, because a lot of the time for a lot of people, it's almost waiting for they're given that management opportunity or that leadership opportunity. But when you choose your direction and your way of doing it, your persona as a tech leader, then you're in the driving seat. You can go to, demonstrate it in the work you have now, whether you're in a leadership position or not. But when you are exhibiting that you are that sort of capable person, people will notice. So therefore, you're in control of your career, even if you are, you haven't got the role yet you want, whatever level you want to go to the next level, whatever level that is, wherever you are, you'll be seen as a person taking that control. And you'll be seen as somebody who can be relied on, who can solve those problems, create those innovations, get control of that problem that's going on over there and turn it into the right direction. Because a lot of the people on the program, they found that they're brilliant problem solvers. And they can take chaos and turn it into a well-oiled machine. Other people are really good at creating the plans and the roadmaps. So when you think, wow, what am I really good at? This is what I want to be known for. Start to demonstrate it and start to show people that you have this level. And you'll get recognized. And even if you are in a company that won't recognize you, it's a bad culture, it's not brilliant, and you're interested in perhaps moving, at least you'll be practicing those skills within that culture in that company. And then you'll say, okay, now it's time for me to leave because I've got a bit of practice under my belt, whether they recognized it or not. So where do you want to go? And what sort of leader do you want to be known as?
Just want to share this quote that felt was like really meaningful result from someone in the Tech Leader program. I think we can all relate to feeling pressed for time, not enough time in the day, not enough time to collect our thoughts and have strategic think time. So when this person shared that they've been focusing on delegating to where they actually have the kind of time that they want to plan and research and think about the hard problems and be more proactive in their roles and responsibilities and less reactive. This is one of the biggest wins that a person can have, I believe, because this is something that pays off and compounds over time. And so just wanted to share a quote from someone who's really been focusing on updating definition of work, heavy delegation, and some of the upsides to that and why it's such a good thing. At the end of the day, we know that a leader needs to know a lot. This is just a really ugly snapshot of all the content that we have in the Tech Leader program for the new skills that we need to be tech leaders. There's a lot here, and none of this stuff is on Stack Overflow. None of this stuff is taught in computer science programs. None of this stuff is taught in code boot camps. Yet we need to know all this stuff to do well on the job as a leader or manager. This is a lot of the stuff I had to learn the hard way through trial and error. We want to help you speed that up, make that learning curve a little bit flatter. So we've been answering a lot of the questions over the course of the discussion, and we're right about here at time. But if there's any other questions that people have that want to pop in there, some great commentary and opinion shared in here. Thank you, Suzanne, Taryn, Mario, Darius. Great questions and discourse here. Let's see, any new questions?
I think Darius has got a good one. I don't think I can default to strategic direction, but this is where I can see I can bring the most value to the company. How do I switch from my defaults, operational tactical, to the high level? So a couple of things in there. How much time do you have to do it? That's the first one. You need time to actually start to think about, strategy. So if you're bombarded with lots of operational tasks and lots of tactical planning and things like that, what can you delegate to other people, if you have a team, which allows you to have actually the time to start thinking more in an innovative way. The other thing is getting to think about what people at the higher level are actually interested in. Because if you are perhaps wanting to, learn, understand more about the business model, the overall business model, sometimes there can be a very easy disconnect between the strategy of the company and the tactical operations of the people actually making it happen. And often it gets lost. So what are the people at the more strategic level interested in? What's their bigger direction and vision for the company? So anything where you are looking at the greater or the picture or the higher company direction, anything where you can look at, well, what's more interesting to the CFO, for example? What's interesting to the CEO? What's interesting to people at those levels? What's interesting about their job? What are they focused on achieving? And then learning about that, learning about just the thing that drives the C-suite of a company is a very good place to start. Todd, what was your thoughts on this?
Yeah, no, I think you said it well. Not sure much more that I would add to that. Understanding the high level goals, the why of the C-suite is one of the best places to reverse engineer from. When you want to understand the decisions and the guidance coming down from the top, understanding what their priorities are is the first place to start. And so if you can root everything that you need to do and want to do in your understanding of what is most important to the C-suite, it makes everything else easier.
But tactically, if you can, what can you delegate to give yourself time to go and look at these things and then say, hey, I want to take some responsibility. Let me have that, and let me organize and plan that and think about that for you. Because if you can serve somebody's agenda, higher up in the C-suite, you can help them achieve their goals, then they're going to recognize that. And then that's how one of the ways of you get seen as being the next level up, because you're solving next level up problems. What other questions we got, Todd?
Let's see, Alex, how to learn how to make time expectation when I don't know the people, the project, and the infrastructure. So I'm assuming this is around time estimates. It's very hard to do that when you don't know the key inputs to the estimate. So without knowing the skills of the people, the context of the project, and the infrastructure that the project is running on, it's very hard to do that. So I would say I wouldn't try to make time expectations on that stuff without knowing those things. I would dig into getting answers and more context and knowledge around those things.
Got a good one from Furkan. How should we approach our leader with the most beneficial way for us to develop ourselves? So again, I think it's very similar to the last question. What interests them? What is important for them to solve? What do they need to get in control of? What problems do they need to solve? What are their goals? So what interests the leader, and then how can you help them? With my team, I want them to manage me, because if they're managing me and telling me what to do and what I need to do, then I'm very happy, because they are doing that thinking for me. They're solving that problem for me. They're giving me solutions to problems that I don't even know are problems. So something's happened, they've come along and they said, hey, this is what's gone on. I've got this solution and this other solution. Which one's the one that you think is best? Then I only have to guide them on the two solutions, which one I think is the best. So if you can be looking at your leaders' goals and objectives and problems and things they're struggling with, and you can help them solve those and help them achieve what they want to achieve, you're going to be a highly valued person. And then if you can show them that you can do that, then you can say, this is what I want to do. I want to be better at this. I want to be able to do more of this. And you've already proved your value to them. So sometimes it's, you go and say, hey, can I have some development funding because I want to do this program? They might go, well, why? But if you've shown an interest and you've helped them achieve what they want to achieve or taken some pressure off them, then they're much more likely to be, oh, yeah, brilliant, because you're already doing a great job. So I would demonstrate it first, help them out in whatever way, and then approach them. I hope that's probably the first thing I can think of.
Great question and great approach. I think a lot of people, one mistake is a lot of people wait for permission to do this kind of stuff. You got to take the initiative yourself.
Reading some of the questions here. So Alex has talked about he likes the innovation parts. Yeah, that's cool. Great, that's your value. Which direction do I need to grow? Just pressing the question. Which direction do I need to grow to be the cool tech guy and minimize management and operational expectations? So this is you designing yourself as that sort of tech leader who's a leader of innovation of product or technology. So this is where you are the leader. You're not necessarily, you may not necessarily be a leader of a project, but you could be the leader of that technology. That's almost like the high-level advisor. So you're more than just a very competent worker. You're a leader that has influence over how that technology is used. The reason we talk about leadership and management together is because it's almost impossible for leaders to not have to manage. So if you have that management skills in there, it means that you're organizing your team and your approach, and you're better at working with other people to manage the information and what they do with the information. So even if you want to be quite extreme as an innovator who doesn't really want to manage, having those management skills will help you do that as well. So leadership and management, they are different, but they're so intertwined. Very few people get away with only being one or the other. Managers need to be able to lead their team, and leaders need to be able to manage their managers, if nothing else. So the two skills go together. They are different, but they're so intertwined. It's very hard to not be an effective leader if you don't have some sort of management skill. But your job is to put yourself out, I'm this sort of leader. This is what I want to do as the cool tech guy. But if you want to make sure that your recommendations are implemented, what's your influencing and management skills to make sure they are?
Great question. Thank you, Stephen. So we are about 10 minutes over. It looks like we've got kind of a similar question there as we just answered for Khan. Thank you for that. If you have more questions about this stuff, I want you to keep an eye out for the email that we're going to send tomorrow. It'll have the replay of what you just watched today in case you want to rewatch any of these sections again. But there'll be another link in there too that will actually be a link to our tech leader community. If you have these kinds of questions that you want to go deeper on, we actually do a monthly Q&A office hour session where you can ask any of these sorts of things. So if you felt rushed or you have another question that comes up after you've thought about this stuff a little bit, the community is a great place to talk with us on a regular basis, as well as have some live question and answering with us too. So keep an eye out for an email from us tomorrow with what you can do as some next steps if you want to take this further than what we just went over today. So thank you for attending, and feel free to DM either of us on LinkedIn. We're pretty active there. We'd love to chat with you about this stuff, and keep an eye out for an email from us soon. Anything else you'd like to add, Stephen?
No, just thank you for coming, and yeah, believe in yourself. If you're here because you have that ambition, then believe in yourself, and then be okay to design what sort of tech leader you want to be, and enjoy crafting that new direction for yourself.
Awesome. Thanks, everyone. See you next time.